It's another game day for the Arizona Coyotes up against the Toronto Maple Leafs. We're going to talk about that game and also take a quick look back on Saturday's game, see what went wrong, and do that and more. All on today's episode of Locked On Coyotes.
You're Locked On Coyotes, your daily podcast on the Arizona Coyotes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the show, everybody. I'm Robyn Leonio. That's Carl Pavlik right beside me on today's episode of Locked On Coyotes. I want to thank everyone for making this show your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including on YouTube. Yes, so we'll never have a paywall for you guys to ever access our content. We got a great show for you guys on today's episode. We're back from the weekend. Arizona taking a 6-3 loss to the Boston Bruins on Saturday. We're going to talk about that very briefly. And of course, we're going to talk about tonight's game, Arizona Coyotes and the Toronto Maple Leafs. Or rather, I should say today, because it's a day game. But we'll get to that in a moment, Carl, because we got to talk about Saturday first.
Yeah, not a good time. The Coyotes dropped their second game. It's their second game having given up 6 goals. Not a great start to the season for the Desert Dogs.
Yeah, like Mitch, really obviously we knew goaltending was going to be a problem, right? And I think a lot of people are starting to, I'm not sure, maybe it's because the kind of circles that I'm in and watching the Coyotes fans just get overreacting, but everyone's starting to really, take some, really give Veggie a really bad rap.
Yeah, he is definitely having a slow start to the season. I think teams are a lot more cued into how to beat him, just what shots to go for. But I do also think the team in front of him is not great. The Coyotes have taken 3 penalties in the first 5 minutes collectively of the 2 games. They are not doing their goaltender any favors with the play in front of the net, especially to start out games.
I mean, and how much of that is the defense? Because we've talked about this multiple times. The fact that this defense is just so much different than, this year. You're obviously you're missing a key piece in Jacob Chikrin, on to name a few, on to name it to just start off with. But this defense looking very different. We've criticized it to start the season. We're just like, this defense just didn't look good. How much of it kind of goes into that?
Well, I definitely think that defense has been an issue for the Coyotes. It's not the sole issue, though. Penalties is definitely a problem. That has, not too much to do with the defensemen. Just they're getting overworked. They're not able to start the game just right. And I think it's, the forwards as well as the defensemen. I think that, the team is relatively new. They're still finding chemistry with each other. They've been facing tough competition. Later this week, they're playing the Montreal Canadiens. They're playing the Ottawa Senators. Hopefully that can kind of bring them back to earth, as it were. Because Pittsburgh and Boston, they are 2 pretty tough teams.
Oh, absolutely. They and I think the Coyotes have not had a good history, a good time against either of those teams, even just to boot. So it's just so to have against those two to start the season, it makes things tough.
I think it was the 19th straight loss to the Boston Bruins. A ridiculous number of losses on the road to the Bruins. It's just not a great start, and I don't want to give too much, say be too negative, but it's definitely some pretty serious cause for concern.
Now I want to get a quick positive out of you. Any positives you took out of Saturday's game? Anything that you're like, okay, this is something that they can work on and they can definitely get better with.
Yeah, I do think that the Coyotes that we're seeing are not a team that goes down without a fight. They were down 3-1 going into the third period. They scored two from Josh Brown and Shane Gostisbehere. Ghost getting one shorthanded, which was just great to see. They weren't able to close the period out, unfortunately. They gave up three after that, but they were able to tie. We've kind of saw that a little bit against Pittsburgh. They kind of came back a bit. They just couldn't go as far. So I like that kind of dedication. I like that they are not a team who's going to, just accept that they're losing and, end it from there. They're a team that's going to like go out and fight. They just got to find a way to play a full 60-minute game.
Absolutely. And that's a lot of things that, like you'd expect out of a young team, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely like the Coyotes are one of the youngest teams. They're a team that's in the second year of the rebuild. There's a lot of players have reasons to play, but it's going to take a while to kick in. It's a long season. All of the cliches that we said before the season still hold true to coming up on 3 games in.
Absolutely. Now, final thing I want to get as a quick bit from you before we move on to today's game, because once again we have a game today at 4 p.m. local time in Toronto. Before we get to that, though, I want to ask you. We want to address one thing, and that's the fact that the Coyotes on Saturday did lose another player in a injury to Connor Timmins. Tell us a little bit about what happened.
I actually didn't see what happened with Timmins. I don't know how he ended up getting hurt. He was only limited to 2.5 minutes, so it was another like first period injury. I honestly have no clue. There was never like I don't think I saw anything major. And like pretty early on, it'd be tough to miss. I thought Timmins was one of the Coyotes' best players against the Pittsburgh Penguins, so this is definitely going to be a pretty significant loss. Although, like Schmaltz is also a significant loss. So the Coyotes are losing two pretty big pieces early on, which is not great for anything, for anyone.
Two injuries in the first two games. I mean, that just kind of spells, the kind of season the Coyotes are going to have, right? Because yeah, you can say cry injuries all you want and stuff like that, and any team can do that. But when you're the Arizona Coyotes, it's just like, yep, this sounds on par.
Yeah, the Coyotes have unfortunately been like one of the top 5 teams for injuries, like in man games lost for I think most of the past decade. I don't know the numbers offhand, but they've definitely missed some pretty significant players in some pretty significant time.
Absolutely. Well, we're gonna go ahead and get ready to shift things in just a moment. And once again, Arizona Coyotes at the Toronto Maple Leafs. That's going to be today at 4 p.m. local time, 4 p.m. our time here in Arizona. It's I believe going to be 7 p.m. over there in Toronto. We're going to get to that in just a moment. But first, I want to tell you guys about our partners from SimpliSafe. The numbers don't lie. In the last decade, over 4 million people have chosen SimpliSafe Home Security to protect their home. You don't earn the trust of that many people without doing something right. At SimpliSafe, your safety is the only thing that matters. And I know because I use SimpliSafe in my own home, and they protect you with cutting-edge security technology powered by 24/7 professional monitoring agents who have your back, and that's why I absolutely love it. With 24/7 professional monitoring, SimpliSafe agents call you the moment a threat is detected and dispatch police or first responders if it is an emergency, even if you're not home or can't be reached. SimpliSafe blankets your home in protection with advanced sensors for every room, window, and door. HD security cameras for inside and outside your home, smarter ways to detect motion, and that only alert you when a threat is real. And even hazard sensors that instantly detect fires, floods, and other threats to your home. Their monitoring experts use proprietary advanced response technology to visually confirm when a break-in is real, so you can get the highest priority police dispatch. Customize the perfect system for your own home in just a few minutes at simplisafe.com/lockedonnhl to save 20% off on your SimpliSafe security system. Once again, that's when you sign up for interactive monitoring plan and you get your first month free. That is simplisafe.com/lockedonnhl to learn more. There is no safe Like SimpliSafe.
Thanks for making Locked On Coyotes your first listen today. Now make your second listen game to game NHL. Every moment, every top performance, every result. Locked On Game to Game covers every game from across the NHL with local analysis that only Locked On can deliver. Follow Game to Game on Locked On NHL, available on the Audacy app, YouTube, and wherever you get podcasts.
So once again, it is a game day for the Arizona Coyotes. Arizona at Toronto, Carl. For us here in Arizona, it is at 4 o'clock, so it's an early game. But let's get to this straight out of the way. There's a reason why I'm looking forward to this road trip, Carl. In
Okay.
some ways, I mean, yeah, it's like it's earlier on than previous times, but if my memory is correct, and it should be because it's only like earlier this year, the Coyotes swept their Eastern Canada road trip last year.
Oh yeah, that did happen. That would be a fun moment. It's a completely different team, but it's just one of those things that happens. Like a bad team can sometimes just match up against a contender. The Toronto Maple Leafs are a very interesting team. This could be fun.
Yeah, and I know in the case of last time, that was when Karove Malka turned on power boost and somehow became like a wall.
Was that one of the 45 plus save nights? I
Yeah,
know
that was one of
Winnipeg
the
was
40.
one.
Yeah, that was
Okay.
one of them. I think it was like almost 50 saves he had that game against Toronto.
Yeah. I mean, it's tough because I don't know if you necessarily want to start Ingram yet, but Vamelka has not had a good showing the first two games. So, maybe you throw him out there hoping he has another good performance against the Toronto Maple Leafs. Maybe you give the new guy a try. I'm not sure what I would do if I was Bear.
It's going to be a difficult thing. I mean, I think the you have to consider multiple things. Of course, A is his previous, Karove Melka's previous kind of games against Toronto, which again were pretty good.
Yeah.
But you also got to consider what he did these last two games, which is not good.
Yep.
Then you look at the other side of things. You look at Connor Ingram. He's got a couple, he's got like playoff games under his belt. Yes, there are playoff games against the Colorado Avalanche and kind of just did not work in his favor. But he was thrown to the wolves and got that experience of high intensity. And the
Yeah.
Toronto Maple Leafs are a high intensity team. So like, who do you how do you make that decision?
I like how you connected the Toronto Maple Leafs to the playoffs like that. The Toronto Maple Leafs, the team famous for losing in the
I
first
know,
round of the
I know they lose in
playoffs.
the first round, but in the regular season they're a high intensity team.
Sure, in the regular season, yeah, they are a high intensity team. Um, yeah, and there are plenty of reasons to be afraid of the Toronto Maple Leafs. Auston Matthews, John Tavares, freaking Michael Bunting now, and
Yeah.
they are going to be without their starting goaltender, but it's probably a bad idea to have Matt Murray as your starting goaltender, anyways.
That's going to make a big difference, and let's address that because Matt Murray, ever since his Stanley Cup years with Pittsburgh, has taken an extreme decline. Like, what was the last goaltender that you can recall had an extreme decline like that after a Stanley Cup? Antti Niemi?
Niemi, yeah, probably. Um, I would say the reason why that's not very common though is because it's hard to win a Stanley Cup. Like we've seen goaltenders take declines after a couple of years. Up until last year, I'd say Bobrovsky was probably one of the bigger ones, but Murray got his cups early with some like phenomenal performances, and you know, it's weird because I think he's how old is he now? Like early 30s, late 20s, gotta be.
Right. Yeah, that sounds about right.
Which is like when you would expect him to be entering his prime, but he just hasn't been able to do that. He is
And
28 years old.
yeah, I mean, a lot of it could be who he had in tandem with him those years,
Yeah,
which makes a big difference. As you can see,
I
what's
think.
going on in Vegas now, and then because now that player is gone and now in a different team, and yeah,
Yeah, I think we did all kind of like underestimate Marc Andre Fleury, but I don't want to give too much credit to him. Matt Murray was out in on the ice for a lot of those 2 wins. Uh, it's just it's like you said, you don't see it happen too much. Go from like Stanley Cup goaltender
basement.
to basement, yeah, to one of the lowest goaltenders in the league. That's quite the fall from
And I
grace.
won't even, and I mean, like, I guess because Stanley, like, saying Stanley Cup goaltender makes it a really narrow track because, again, that's only like one goaltender every year. I guess I can even say a deep playoff goaltender. You can even point to, like who, like Vancouver or Dallas or whatever had, like, in the previous couple years.
Yeah, like he is kind of Roberto Luongo esque,
Mm-hmm.
but Luongo at least kind of like found footing being just like a solid goaltender in Florida. Murray's had to like bounce around a bit. That unsuccessful performance in Ottawa. I kind of want to root for him because on one level he's the underdog, but he's also got like 2 rings, so he's not that big of an underdog. He's playing with house money.
Oh yeah, no, like you don't need to be like. It's like, yeah, I really hope he does well. It's like, dude, you got 2 Stanley Cups. Like, come on.
Yeah, yeah. You've made it twice. You probably haven't gotten the money like a lot of other players have gotten, but you got the success, and that's they always say that that's more important than the money.
And here's another thing I'll give credit for in terms of winning a Stanley Cup. The only goaltender to have won back in this last decade to have won back-to-back Stanley Cups in a full year.
Vasilevsky.
Because Vasilevsky didn't play. Because remember, we were talking COVID shortened years.
Oh yeah, yeah. He is like I don't know. He is definitely a good player. We're probably talking too much about a guy who is not going to be playing, though. We should definitely throw that out there.
I know,
Uh,
but that is absolutely fair. I just like to go down I just go down that rabbit hole whenever someone talks about him. But let's continue.
yeah,
Um, like the because this game is gonna be interesting, right?
yeah,
The just because of that, and just because of the Auston Matthews connection, because of you know who the rest of this team consists of.
yeah. The Michael Bunting connection as well. Have you seen the Leafs kind of be in the trade for Chikrin conversation
There
much?
was a brief discussion on the Leafs being in the trade for Chicken, and I think there is reason to believe that they're still one of the top contenders.
Yeah,
Obviously, not as much talk as Ottawa's been getting, but I think, to my knowledge, I think like the three most likely teams go of to receive Chikrin come from north of the border in Canada, and of course, Ottawa and Toronto are two of those three.
yeah. So there's going to be a lot of those vibes in the next coming week. I'm sure the players are going to have to deal with questions like that. It's going to be a tough one. Is it winnable? I'm not sure. I don't think the Coyotes played against Boston or Pittsburgh in a way that would suggest that tonight's game is winnable, but it's also hockey. And the Maple Leafs lost against the Ottawa Senator or the Montreal Canadiens earlier this month. So who knows what could happen? Anything could happen, and the Coyotes could take a win. And I'd be grateful. like I said, I want them to like not be competing for that worst record. Like I just want that out of my head. They could have like another 18 game losing streak just as long as a win in there at some point.
And we're talking, and what are you looking at? Looking at in terms of that standard, you're talking about like NHL worst or their personal worst?
I mean, they're the same now because the Coyotes have tied twice for the worst NHL start with that one New York Rangers team
I
from.
mean, I'm talking about like points for this total points for the season.
Oh, I'm not even worried about the season right now. I just want them to not have the worst start.
Fair
Like,
enough. The worst, yeah, it's the longest winless streak because not
yeah,
technically OT loss doesn't count as a loss for some in or it was a shootout loss that doesn't whatever it was one of those
yeah,
doesn't count officially in the record book. So that's when they go winless.
yeah. Back when there was ties in the game and everyone claims it was better. I am glad that ties no longer exist.
Oh, yeah, no, screw ties. I don't like them.
Yeah. Do we have the stats for the game, or is it a little bit too early?
We do have bet online odds for the game, and I guess we can go ahead and move on to that because that's fun. But before we do that, I just want to let everyone know, just for a quick second, that just a quick reminder that we are going to do live shows throughout this season. We will let you know ahead of time when we do a live show. Unfortunately, and I do apologize to those who wanted to tune into our live show last week again for our opener. But unfortunately, we had streaming problems. That's we're gonna hope we don't run into those again. That we keep things going and keep our Locked On Coyotes After Dark going. But that said, let's go ahead and go to the Bet Online odds of the game. So here it is, Carl. Arizona Coyotes are 1.5 underdogs at plus 150. Maple Leafs favored minus 467 plus 330 397 if you decide to bet on Arizona. Total points at 6.5.
The games have been pretty high offense, and the Coyotes have given up 6 goals in their past 2 games. So
Mm-hmm.
it kind of feels like right to bet the over on that. But also, it's hockey, and that's got to end at some point, and you get like a 2-1 slog. So is that going to be today? Who can say?
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting conversation on that. Like, I think, you know, it is hard to say. And I think you look at it in this way. I don't see this being, a 2-1 goalie fest. I don't. It's definitely not going to be that.
No.
Um, um, and that means like, okay, what kind of like what are we looking at in terms of the actual chances that this goes under? And I think it's really low because you're really looking at the fact that if both teams get to at least three, you're already at six.
Yeah.
And that's saying a lot. And I think both teams can definitely get there. I think the Coyotes even less so because their offense hasn't. I haven't seen enough from them to be like, yeah, I think they can score three against the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Sure.
But I'm gonna say because I look at this one is gonna go over. I cannot predict the Arizona Coyotes to win, even though I'd love to see the streak going on. Coyotes winning on the road in Eastern Canada, but probably not going to happen. My score prediction, Carl, will be 5-2 Toronto
Mm.
Maple Leafs.
See, I do. I do kind of worry that the Coyotes' offense is going to dry up, but I think that they're going to eventually stop taking as many penalties. For this one, I'm
Mm-hmm.
going 4-2 Toronto. So still saying the Toronto Maple Leafs win, but not having them go over that 6.5. I think
So you'll
that it's
stay
going to
you'll
be
stay under. Um,
Yeah.
but it looks like both of us don't have the Coyotes covering.
Nope.
And yeah, Toronto wins outright. I don't think like unless the Coyotes show us like unless the Coyotes can show us something tangible that they have a chance of winning games. I don't think either of us are going to predict them to win games.
Yeah. Until they get close and the Coyotes managing to like tie things up briefly in the third period is not close enough for me to say that they're gonna win this. Maybe later this week when we're talking Montreal, when we're talking Ottawa, that may be a different story.
Ottawa
But
would be a little more
for right now,
difficult, but Montreal, yeah, I can
yeah,
agree with you on that. That's a conversation we can have later. Although we were saying out there, Montreal did beat Toronto at the start of the season, so
yeah, and I also don't think the Senators are as good as people think that they were going to be. Uh,
I mean, I don't think the Senators are a basement team. I do think they are potentially a bubble team, but that's at
They
best.
so they've played 2 games. They lost 4-1 to the Buffalo Sabres. They've lost 3-2 to the Maple Leafs. That's not the record of a bubble team. Uh, I think they had quite a few free agency or like trade splashes, but I don't think they did enough to address overall.
That's fair enough. That's fair enough.
Or at least it's too early for them to like start gelling. Well,
Yeah.
maybe say that.
Yeah. But here's one thing I will say, Carl, like, just to kind of give some bit of somewhat bright side, but also maybe like depending on which way you want to look at it, depending on like if you are like full in on tank mode or not, if you are not and just kind of want to see some good hockey, and want to see, you know, Coyotes play well. The Coyotes don't have the worst record in the NHL despite not having won a game. There's a team that's 0-4 right now,
Yeah, they've
including
only lost
having
2.
including a recent loss to the Chicago Blackhawks.
Oh, see, that's when it gets bad when you start losing to the Blackhawks.
So Coyotes fans, be lucky you're not a fan of the San Jose Sharks.
Every day I feel happy that I'm not a fan of the San Jose Sharks. Just seems like a miserable existence.
Yeah, I know. I know. But we both have the Coyotes losing this game. So they will go to 0-3, but we'll readdress this again when they get close to the Montreal game and kind of maybe figure things out from there.
Yep.
Anything that you're going to look out for personally in this game, or any other thoughts you want to share about the upcoming game?
So we didn't mention it earlier, but Dylan Guenther did get his first NHL point against the Boston Bruins. He's got plenty of opportunity. Let's see what he can do in game 2.
Oh, absolutely. I'll be super excited to see what Dylan Guenther can do. And speaking of something like that, I do want to just give the a quick heads up to people. And like I mentioned, the tank earlier, just as my little final thought. The NHL just the other day put out a little stat on Connor Bedard's first 10 games in the WHL this season. Kind of give you a little excited for the tank in some ways. Here you go, Carl. Here's just for you. So Connor Bedard, 9 goals, 10 assists, 140 shot attempts, 70 shots on goal.
It's a lot of shots, even for a juniors player. 70 is
Yeah,
insane.
yeah, that's on goal. 140 attempts.
That's just crazy.
Yeah, this kid is going to be really good. I think a lot of us are going to be looking forward to that, and that's why so many teams are losing.
Yep. Definitely, definitely a reason they're looking for a generational talent.
Absolutely. But anyways, that's going to be just about it out of time for this episode of Locked On Coyotes. If you like what you heard, don't forget to leave a review, like, comment, subscribe if you have yet to already. We're available everywhere you get your podcasts, including on YouTube. Don't forget to interact with us on social media. We're on Facebook, facebook.com/Locked On Coyotes, on Instagram at Locked On Coyotes, and on Twitter at LO_Coyotes. I am personally at Robyn_Leano. Carl Pavlik is at Carl Pavlik FFH. Interact with us, ask a question you might have, we might answer right back, or in a future episode of the Locked On Coyotes podcast. Thanks again, everyone, for tuning in to today's episode. Hope you guys are staying safe out there. Hope you guys are staying healthy. And don't forget to howl on.